everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of Walking the Road. We have a great show for you today. We've got Damian Brady, a well-known character on SMB. He's sitting on the couch of truth, and during telling his story, and then we'll be asked the hard questions during my Zoom interview. And for Go Away, we're talking to Steve Baker, a chef who travels internationally quite a lot, who's just completed a grueling long-haul journey from Amsterdam to Bali, and tells us of the adventures of traveling long haul in the age of COVID. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Hello, my name is Damian Brady. I'm 49 years of age and I'm living in Melbourne. I've been asked to speak with Guy about this idea of fork in the road and how travel has sort of changed my perception of the world and how it's led me down different paths that never would have been possible before, I imagine. Just a little bit of background. I grew up in Brisbane. I was born in a small town called Blackall. And we didn't really travel much at all. The furthest trips we took were to Rockhampton to see relatives up there, usually at Christmas time. Apart from that, any other breaks we had, we didn't have a lot of money, so we would often help my father at his work. So yeah, holidays weren't really a thing for us. So I grew up in Brisbane and then had the opportunity when I was about 25, so 1994, 95, to move to Jakarta. I was at that stage of my life where I just said yes to everything. So off I went. I didn't speak the language. I only knew one person who I was going there to live with. Knew nothing about the country at all, but off I went. And it was probably one of the best things I've ever done in my life to date. There I was, young, naive, in a city of about 20 million people. I didn't speak the language, didn't know anything about Islam or anything about Javanese culture, and there I was in the middle of it. So I had to think on my feet, learn as much of the language as I could very quickly, and establish a network of friends. I then began working there as a teacher, and that was it. It was probably some of the most fun times of my life. Made some wonderful friends who are now pretty much scattered all around the world. The currency crisis hit, and a lot of the expats returned to their countries. So I now have a network of people all around the world that one day I intend to visit, for sure. The other bit of travel, I haven't really done a lot of travel as far for travelling's sake. I travel a bit, have travelled a bit for work. So I've been offered jobs in New Zealand on 2 occasions. I've taken them. It's a beautiful country. It, despite being very similar to Australia in many ways, it's extremely different as well. And for me personally, New Zealand showed me, I mean, it does have its faults, but it showed me what kind of a society we could be here in Australia, one that's very inclusive, embraces the Indigenous culture. When I arrived there, I think the Prime Minister was a woman, leader of the opposition was a woman, the Governor-General was a woman. Everywhere you turned, there was Māori language. You could, which is something you just didn't see here in Australia. Once again, I established beautiful friends there, got to travel around with my job, got to get in the car and just drive around the whole country for weeks. It is absolutely one of the most stunning places I've ever been. With these sort of ideas of around travel and broadening my mind, I just found it completely changed the way I view the world. As a rather naive and sheltered young man growing up in Queensland in the mid-90s, 80s and 90s, my view of the world was somewhat limited. Going to Indonesia turned my whole world and mind upside down, and I just found that I had a more understanding, probably less bigoted view of the world, which I'm happy to say I carry with me today. So when thinking about travel, I do, think that it's just basically about broadening your horizons. Ideally, I would love to go to Ireland as my next trip when we can travel, just so I can connect with some family heritage that I don't really have here in Australia. And, I think particularly for us in Melbourne at the moment, where our movement has been extremely limited, to just, leaving the house for an hour a day, not travelling beyond 5 kilometres and then 25. I've really seen how important this idea of leaving, visiting friends, seeing new things has become to a lot of people, and I look forward to doing it a lot more now that the situation's a lot better here in Melbourne. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Damian, for sharing that story of your time in Indonesia and New Zealand with us. That's really appreciated. I have a question for you, if you don't mind. With regards, in particular, your time in New Zealand, you mentioned your different experience about how New Zealand society deals with, and I think the word you used was embraces its Indigenous culture in a way that you've obviously felt was missing here in Australia. And I guess my question is, how does that look in terms of your everyday life in New Zealand? How is that interwoven into your life and your experience of living there in ways that perhaps we as white Australians don't experience here?
Sure.
If you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. So with a little bit of background, like I grew up with Indigenous family members. So I was very much aware all along of, the history I was being taught in school wasn't, really correct. There was an alternative story, and the abuse and racism that my cousins experienced was definitely unfounded in my opinion. So to go to a country where I just didn't witness that at all,
Right.
I mean, there are odd cases here and there, but as in general, you turn on the news, you're greeted in Maori, whether the newsreader was Maori or not. It was, name places were rather complicated, often to get my tongue around anyway. But, it was Maori was taught in schools,
Yes.
whether you were Maori or Pakeha, a Westerner. So it was just everywhere, and I feel, I love going to New Zealand. I've got friends with beautiful properties there that, one of them has a property that has a marae on one of the hills, and that is just basically a sacred site. Everywhere you turn, the architecture,
Yes.
fashion, beautiful traditional tattooed faces. You're just reminded constantly that there is a culture here. And I think the difference I found between Australia and there is that they actually had a treaty, the Treaty of Waitangi.
Yes.
Whereas we just began here with Terra Nullius. And so what I find with New Zealanders is that from the beginning of white settlement, they've always had to consider the other because of that treaty.
Correct.
So they're more of a, collective understanding of what it is to be New Zealand than what I find here in Australia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent. No, I think that's a really, really good point, and just how the mutual respect and the integration, at least to a reasonable extent of the cultures, has produced a more resolved kind of single society than than we have, you know, where I think for a long time, and certainly in our generation, anything connected with our own Indigenous culture and First Australians, we were kind of taught to treat it with disdain in a way, and that's a learned skill. You know, that's not how we're born. That's a learned skill. And it's a very, very interesting observation. All right, Damian, that's terrific. Thank you very much for your contribution. It's lovely to see you again. You look very well. And,
thank you.
I hope after all this time in lockdown, we'll get to see you in the flesh soon. You take care.
Let's hope so.
Okay. Thanks, David. Bye. Bye. Hi, everybody. It's time for Go Away. And this week, rather unusually, I'm doing another interview. My friend Steve Baker has just completed a grueling long-haul flights from Amsterdam to Bali, and I thought it would be useful to perhaps gain some insight into exactly what's involved in long-haul travel in the age of COVID. So, hi, Steve, and welcome. Hi, Steve.
How are you? Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, sorry, I know you're in Bali, Steve. There's a bit of a delay, so we'll just let you tell your story. Tell everybody how you got from Amsterdam to Bali in the last few days and what you experienced along the way.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Apologies, guys, if the internet's dropping in and out. As Guy mentioned, we're a little bit stuck here, but is it the new norm? It's been quite an experience, you know, whether it's the pandemic or pandemonium of travel at the moment. So I've been working on trying to get a business visa. Tourist visas are just not possible at all with Indonesia at the moment. So a long and lengthy process. It's actually taken me about 6 weeks to finalise everything. I had to go through legal agencies here in Bali to submit documents, through Jakarta to The Hague, to the embassy in The Hague, and then trying to coordinate those two embassies to make sure they were on the same page to then submit documents from Jakarta. So a very lengthy process. The challenge out there at the moment is it's just very big delays in everyone's concerned, obviously, with COVID, and trying to get through to the embassy itself in The Hague. It was a 2.5 month wait list, even trying to get in for a 5-minute appointment.
Wow.
So really big challenges there. Obviously, you know, knowing Indonesia from years back, living here, a little bit difficult with paperwork on both sides of the fence, and very unforgiving. So the first experience at the embassy actually failed, and again it was another 2-week wait.
And what about the actual flying, Steve? How was that?
Yeah, I mean the flying itself. So going through that process and then into the airport, a 3-hour process in Amsterdam just to get through the initial check-in process. There's 2 different COVID tests on the way, not physical tests, but submitting all the documents twice over just to get in to the actual terminal. So anyone traveling, allow a huge amount of time because, you know, as mentioned, that was a 3-hour process in Amsterdam itself for about a 6-hour flight to Doha. And again, the same process. It was about a 3-hour experience going through Doha. And everything.
And your protective gear on the flights? Yeah, had a full.
Exactly. They're now issuing.
I think we've got a photo here somewhere. We've got a picture here somewhere of you with your gear on.
All masked up. So yeah, gloves. In some, they're requesting a lot of people wear gloves. Not mandatory, but gloves are suggested. And then a full face mask and a full face shield. So for the entire time, not all the way through terminals, but in boarding lounges, required to wear a face mask and a face shield. And then on the flights, you're requested to wear gloves, face mask, and face shield for the duration. So all the way Amsterdam, Doha, all the way to Jakarta.
Very comfortable, I can imagine.
very, very comfortable trying to sleep like that. So I felt like some sort of disjointed chicken sitting there pecking at my chest with this plastic face shield. So needless to say, there was very little sleep.
Yes.
But the flights are reasonably spread out, but there's no guarantee. If flights are busy, they don't even social distance as much on the flights. Thankfully for mine, it was. But a lot of the time, if passengers are willing to travel, that's why they're wearing the face shields in between.
Yeah, right.
Arriving in, if anyone's coming through this way, it was 4 hours. Or
4 hours.
Almost 4.
4 hours arrival time at the airport. Wow.
I had a 4-hour connection, and it was like an auditorium in the actual transit lounge outside with about 300 seats. And you have to, again, even though you've got all the documents in advance, you've got to go through the whole process again with more security screening, go through a doctor's check, go through a COVID check location again, lots of rubber stamps, lots of documents.
So unless you're really, 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 really have to travel, you'd suggest don't do it. Is that is that a fair call?
We can safely say I'm still getting over the experience. Yeah, it was a lot, but yeah. So definitely a challenge out there. It was a bit of an eye opener to go through, and see how tight it is. Obviously, it's a good thing, but real challenge for anyone out there that's thinking about flying at the moment. So.
Thanks, Steve. That's really good. Good to know. Even just to reaffirm that we're doing the right thing, staying put just at the moment in terms of international travel. And that's it for this week of Fork in the Road. Thanks to Steve. Thanks to our guest on the Couch of Truth, Damian Brady. And we'll see you next week. Thanks and goodbye.
Thank you, guys.